we are now all set on our live stream and for recording.
Thank you, Steve.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Janet Riggs. I'm treasurer for the Rotary.
Good morning. I see it is 11 o'clock, so we'll start the meeting. The Middlesex County School Board meeting for July 13th is now in session. Due to the state of emergency declaration announced by Governor Northam in order to curb the spread of the COVID-19 virus, the Middlesex County Board of Supervisors on March 31st, 2020 passed an ordinance which, among other things, states that the infectious nature of COVID-19 makes it unsafe to assemble in one location members of the public and/or a quorum for public bodies, including the Board of Supervisors and the school board, making it difficult or impossible for public entities to conduct meetings in accordance with normal practices and procedures. In accordance with Section 15.2-1413 of the Code of Virginia, 1950, as amended, notwithstanding any contrary provision of law, general or special, the following emergency procedures are adopted to ensure continuity of government during the pendency of the emergency and disaster created by COVID-19. Section B, meetings of public entities may be held electronically through real-time electronic communication means without a quorum of members physically present in a single location, provided that notice of such meetings is still given in accordance with applicable laws. Acting under the jurisdiction of Middlesex County Board of Supervisors, this meeting will be conducted in compliance with the ordinance. We are in open session, and pursuant to the Code of Virginia, the board discussed personnel matters, student matters, and legal matters during closed session. Matters discussed in closed session have been added to the consent agenda, and other parts of the agenda as action and information items. When members of the board certify that only lawful matters were discussed in closed session, and please answer by roll call. Ms. Jordan.
Mr. Goforth,
Yes, ma'am.
Mrs. Sochek,
Yes.
Dr. Shores,
Yes.
and Mr. Reed.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, if we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dr. Gretz, do we have any recognitions today?
We do, Madam Chair. Thank you, board members, and I'm delighted to see so many people joining us for this meeting today. We have members of the Rotary Club, the Middlesex Rotary Club, and I want to give you just a little bit of information about this recognition, and then I think they are prepared to say a couple of words as well, and then we have a great celebration with them. Barry Thomas contacted me shortly after, Madam Chair, you and I had the opportunity to speak with the Rotary Club about what our planning and some of the things that were happening in the schools. And many of you know, we have a wonderful relationship with the club, and it's one that's growing. And each year they pursue expanding our partnership and ways that they can be of specific support to our students and our teachers. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate the work that the Rotary does with us. So in keeping with that, that characteristic of that club, they contacted me, Barry did in particular, to say that they would like to pursue a grant opportunity on our behalf that would help to fund some protective equipment in the interest of keeping our students and teachers safe when we get back to school. And so we had lots of communication about that. And I think maybe I'll just say the end result is the reason that they're with us today. I do want to turn it over to Barry. If Barry is, I think he's on the line and prepared to be with us. Otherwise, I can say more about that.
Peter, I am on, at least I think I'm on audio. I don't think my video has been allowed. Oh, there it is. And that's fine. But let me just
There you
begin.
are.
I assume all can hear. I want to thank the board, Chair Suchek, and yourself. We consider this really a great opportunity on behalf of the club to give back into the community. Our Rotary Club has had as one of its really primary areas of focus for many years is the school system. We firmly believe that without a viable, really attentive and effective school system, then our county and our folks and our citizens won't have the growth opportunities that we really desire. So you're very high on our list. We're extremely grateful for the opportunity to have worked with you to put this together. And as you said properly, our focus was try to find an ability to help not only deal with the current situation in the way of health protection for both citizens, students, and the staff, but to also see if we couldn't combine that with an activity that helped us begin to grow out of the current problem with the focus of the reopening of schools. So we believe we have found that proper blend by working with you. We will be very proud to be delivering a check of roughly $3,300, which, as we have spoken, we would ask to be used for perhaps an individual component of your protection plans. At the same time, we are recognizing that your protection plans are both evolving and being directed by you, your staff, and your board, which we understand that flexibility and don't want any prescription of use for a particular item to go against the plans as they might involve. I do believe that we have on the phone with us Janet Riggs, our current treasurer, Stan Koloff, one of our past presidents, and been very active in the community. I believe there's a chance also that I haven't confirmed it that Mel Placilla, our immediate past president, is on, as well as Jim Knupp, who is our current secretary. And we have so many of us sort of showing up today, again, as an indicator of the confidence that we do have in your handling of the schools, the board's handling of the schools, and the degree of importance to which we place on the school system. So with that, I will end by saying we thank you for your cooperation with us. We do look to strengthen our relationships with you in the system, and we do appreciate this chance to give back. So if I would just simply say, if there are any other Rotarians who might want to comment very briefly.
Yes, Barry, I would. This is Stan Koloff. The school system and our ability to interact with the students has been really one of the high points that all of our members enjoy. And that would start perhaps with the Kids First program, which is one that I've been personally involved with, along with many of our members. So many other activities that really become some of the highlight of our interaction with the school. The reality store, our dictionaries for the third grade kids, career day, high school scholarships, spelling bee, middle school field day, just a whole host of things that are really some of the things that our members, and certainly myself, enjoy the most to participate with the school system. And I just wanted to add that. So what we do for the schools really is very important to us, and some things that I think we see the greatest personal rewards. So we thank you for the opportunity to do this, and we know it'll be well spent and hopefully address a very great need that you now have.
We are most grateful for your continued support. As I mentioned when I spoke with you all in May, we
Right.
recognize what a outstanding organization you are and how supportive you have been for years of our system. And this is wonderful to receive this check so that we can help implement our health checks and what have you as we open school. Thank you.
Most welcome.
Thank you for
Thank you.
joining us too. We appreciate that.
Absolutely. And I think with that, unless Peter, you have any other needs, we'll just sign off and leave you to your meeting.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add, and I want to thank you both for your comments and thank all of the Rotarians for their support. I did want to add that with the generous contribution that you've given us, one of the things that our nurses asked us to pursue In addition to the infrared touchless thermometers that we've been able to order multiple of those for each school, but also making sure each school is equipped with hospital grade thermometers. And so, among other things, this contribution has enabled us to do that and to order them in advance so that we could go ahead and have them in the schools. So thank you.
Very good to hear. We thank you. Okay.
Anything else, Dr. Gretz?
No, ma'am.
There are one section of additions to the minutes, to the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the financial addition?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Two announcements. The Middlesex High School graduation will be July the 25th, and August the 10th will be the next school board meeting at 11 a.m. All right. The meeting is open for public comment. Mr. Dunkel, do you have anyone waiting online for public comment?
I do not have any comments on YouTube or Facebook, and there is nothing in our chat.
Okay. I'll close public comment at this time since there is another opportunity later in the meeting. Any reports from our board members? Dr. Shores, do you have anything?
I do not have anything at this time. I think all of our teachers are ready to go.
Okay. All right. Mr. Goforth, anything from bridging and?
We have a new director that's in place.
Great.
I'm real interested in how opening the schools and getting kids on the bus and to the program is going to work. Hopefully Peter will have a little bit more information about how bridging communities will fit into our reopening. The Middlesex Foundation did have a virtual meeting. And I think all of the board members and administration has seen a report from the county about the water system. And that is what's holding us up right now for the housing project. Once that gets bid and gets started, I think that we will be able to determine whether we're going to have an extra tank and pump for the necessary pressure for the fire suppression system. So everything though is ready to go once that is done. And I think what I understand, I think they're almost ready to start a bid process for that. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Reed, anything?
No, I don't have
anything. And I don't have anything. The regional special education meeting is in August, so I'll be able to report after our at our next school board meeting. All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The local consolidated application, Ms. Velez, are you? I know you're there. There you are.
Well, and before she begins, let me just say it's been about a year since Mrs. Velez joined us as Director of Exceptional Education, and she has done an exceptional job. She's really done a wonderful job leading our programs, and in particular making sure that we're being as efficient and compliant as possible with our federal programs. And this is a consolidated application by which we access all of those federal grant monies. So I did want to just take a moment and just recognize her. She's such a welcome member of our team, wonderful leader, and somebody who's really having a high level of impact on our programs and our students and our families and our staff. So thank you, Kathleen.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I do have a very small PowerPoint to kind of go over the different portions of the federal grant, but I'm not sure if I will be able, I'm going to try. Oh, it's going to let me share. That always makes me so happy. Okay. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Okay, Madam Chair and the board, we're going to go over a brief summary of the federal programs, Title 1, 2, 4, and 5, with Title 3 left out, as that is the one that we are part of the statewide consortium with 67 other school divisions. So that's all fiscally held through the Virginia Tech program, and they're the ones who submit the application on behalf of all of us. Okay, so from there, basically the overview is just our goal is to prepare children preschool through grade 12 to be prepared for college, trade schools, or careers. We'll provide early intervention services, a strong foundation in learning skills, as well as a rigorous academic at the level of high school, alongside some technical and community school collaborations in order to improve the student outcomes. We'll be providing targeted assistance in conjunction with strong general education instruction for our qualifying students. The targeted instruction areas identified are specific to the reading and math. We target all students, but specifically those students who are identified as English language learners, migrant students, and students identified as homeless. Specific research-based assessments and interventions are listed in the PowerPoint as well as within the application. These are the funds that we received in based on the 1920 award. So under Title I, it was $347,856.58. Title II was $52,144.51. Title IV, $24,582.35, and Title V was $23,072.61. The Title I program is where we look at improving the basic programs. Our staff are aware of their responsibilities to provide educational services as outlined in the McKinney-Vento Act to students who are considered homeless. Our homeless liaison remains in contact with the family as well as our outside collaborators in the Department of Social Services. And we try to monitor the family's housing status and the potential needs they may have. Identified as homeless has access to Title I Part A support to provide for direct needs or to help coordinate community-funded supports. Title II is where we have the mentoring and new teacher program. Through the school division, we seek to hire teachers that are meeting all state qualifications and placing them in areas in which they are properly endorsed. Title IV funds are used to support personnel, specifically the Compass Academy, as a way to assist in increasing students' educational outcomes, school completion, and gaining the skills required to be lifelong learners and great citizens. And Title V are the funds that we use to support the instructional programs that assist in funding support staff for summer remediation for our students requiring additional supports in both literacy and math. And that was just a basic overview of the application that I had submitted with Dr. Gretz. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Kathleen. You've done a
Thank
great
you.
job.
All right, let me get out of here somewhere I can.
Board members, if you have any questions about our consolidated application, we can certainly answer them.
Do you need a motion to approve the
I need a
application?
motion to approve the local consolidated application for 2021.
So moved.
there a second?
Second.
Any questions for Dr. Gretz or Ms. Velez? All those in favor of the motion to approve the grant? I'm sorry, to approve the application, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? All right, we have that approved. Thank you, Ms. Velez, for all your hard work. All right, Dr. Gretz.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. So our next item is for us to present our plan for reopening school. And I've got a lot of information to share. I'm going to share my screen as well. Okay, so with our plan, obviously this has been something that's been evolving for quite some time. We have a lot of people who have worked together very hard to try to put mitigation strategies in place that would allow us to reopen school in the most robust way that we possibly can. What I'd like to do during this presentation is essentially go over our philosophy for reopening. Why reopen at all at this time? Want to share some feedback that we've gotten through our surveys from staff and families, parents. Go over the health plan that we have put together. It's a necessary component that we have to submit to the Virginia Department of Health as well as the Department of Education. And really a lot of the details surrounding how we've put together logistical and operational considerations are in that health plan. And I'm not going to go through it word for word, but I am going to go through the different sections of it to highlight them for everybody. And then to go over our schedule that we're proposing, and then to look at our operational considerations and instruction. What will instruction look like next year? With the end goal in mind, really being not necessarily to present to you the completed, finalized, etched in stone plan, but for you to see, this is what we're thinking, this is where we'd like to go, and this is what I'm recommending to the school board, and to have the board officially to bless this for the rest of our planning between now and August.
They mailed it. She said they mailed it. She looked it up. Where is that?
Steve,
Hello?
are you able to mute folks? It looks like he's already done. Okay.
Yeah, they're muted.
Okay.
Hello? You want to talk to Caleb? Caleb, did you put?
I just want to make sure that everybody can hear me when I begin. There we go. Okay. So, I mean, let's just talk briefly about this. Why even reopen? Everybody obviously has personal convictions about how schools should be responding, how the Virginia economy should be responding. There's a national conversation, there's a state level conversation, there's local conversations going on about that. The Department of Education has put together this guidebook for us called Recover, Redesign, and Restart. It's a several hundred-page guidance document that really serves as the cornerstone to consolidate the work that several different task forces throughout the state have done to put together considerations and recommendations. And so the real reason to consider reopening, if there aren't others, is just to make sure everybody understands that we have been, by governor's order, we've been required to deliver new instruction for the new year. And so does that mean we need to do that face-to-face? It doesn't, but it does mean that we need to pivot, if you will, and we need to put together a program that's very different from what we experienced in the spring. And it has to involve the delivery of new instruction and the assessment of new instruction. We know that there are going to be learning gaps that exist. We know from our survey data that both our teachers and our parents are concerned about those learning gaps. We have learning gaps that exist before the shutdown in March. And we know that there are students during the shutdown in the spring that did not participate in learning. We know that. There are many that did, but there's some that didn't. And so we are anticipating that those achievement gaps are going to exist when we get back to school. They exist now, and we have to find ways to address them. We are looking at different categories of risk assessments, if you will. There's certainly the risk of exposure to COVID. So there's the risk of infection. And there's a whole series of strategies that we need to put together and considerations to prevent as much as possible, to mitigate exposure for our students and our staff, our teachers. But there are other risks as well. If you've accessed the American Association of Pediatric document that just came out, they're advising strongly that schools consider the risk associated with isolation for children, mental health and wellness risks associated with these learning gaps. And we're trying to assimilate, if you will, all of the guidance that we're getting from the CDC, from the Department of Health, from the Department of Education, and now that Association of Pediatrics. And they're not dissimilar, but they do approach all of this from a different disposition, different angle. And so we have certain things that we're mandated to do. We have certain things that we're recommended to do. And at the end of the day, when we consider all of these things, we're recommending to the board that we reopen on time as scheduled in our adopted calendar, August 24th, with a hybrid model of learning that involves in-person learning and remote virtual learning with as much face-to-face as we can possibly accomplish while complying with the governor's order, with the advice that we've gotten from our school board attorney, as well as the Virginia Association of School Superintendents attorney, and recommendations from VACOR. That's our risk management and liability firm. And they all have very firm stances on these things. And so what you're going to see is the plan that we've put together, and one that I recommend to the school board, that limits the vulnerability and liability of the board and yet pursues as robust a program of getting back to school and learning as we can possibly do. Let me share some of the parent feedback that we received. Excuse me just a second. I've got to adjust something on my screen. Okay. So as you can see, we had 344 responses. That's certainly not representative of all of our parents, but these are the folks that responded to our survey, majority of them from the elementary school. You can see the majority of the parents that we worked with or who responded felt like they had the access to technology, to the device for remote learning, personal computer, Chromebook, or an iPad, as well as internet. Majority said yes. Now, how are we going to mitigate the fact that all of them don't? And we know that several people did not respond. We're pursuing LTE-enabled devices that will enable families in almost every part of the county to have hotspot internet access and to have it in a way that gives us the ability to monitor what's happening on the device, much more so than if we just gave an individual hotspot. Our Chromebooks are on back order, and what we're seeing all over the state is that people are having a very hard time getting Chromebooks. One of our neighboring divisions was told over the weekend that they wouldn't see theirs until close to November. Ours are reportedly going to come to us in late July. So there will be another distribution of devices. I'll say more about that later when we get into the plan. This is an interesting question. So what we asked families, given the fact that we're going to have precautions in place, so there'll be physical distancing, health protocols, hand washing, etc. What is your disposition towards your child coming back for in-person instruction? So the blue and the red are those that have a positive response. They either definitely are, the blue, or yeah, they're likely to send their children for face-to-face. So the majority of people are comfortable with that. Of those that aren't, So there were some that said, I'm not likely to send my children in. And there's some that said, I am definitely not going to send my children in. Of those that said they were unlikely, 36 responses, the majority of them don't want to cut ties with the school division and homeschool. They want their children to continue to do it by remote. And I think that's key for us to understand. Only very few responses said, I'm leaving, I'm going to be homeschooling. Most of them want to continue that relationship with us. And this is a key consideration that I want all parents to understand, and we'll make this a part of our communication moving forward, is that for those that are not comfortable with their, even given our plan, and when you see the details of it and as it evolves, for those that are not comfortable with their children returning for face-to-face learning, we do want very much to partner with each one of those individually to provide materials, provide opportunities for full virtual learning and remote learning while we get through this temporary time. We don't want parents to think that the only way that they can avoid in-person instruction is to disenroll their children and petition the board to have their children released from compulsory attendance and homeschool. So these are the folks that said they were unlikely. There were 11 people that said, no, I'm definitely not sending them. And interestingly, 100% of them want to continue remote learning with the schools. So I wanted to make sure the board was aware of that. We asked some very specific features of remote learning, how this went, and for parents to rate their levels of satisfaction with these. I won't read each one of these to you, but basically it was, how did you feel about the learning activities in general? What about specifically the teacher-led lessons? How about the online resources that you had access to? Teacher feedback on assignments, teacher communication, school communication, division communication. In general, you can see the folks that responded felt like communication was pretty positive. Most of these, I think, are positive responses. One of the things that we want to make sure, and as we pursued training our teachers for moving forward, was that our teachers had the capacity and the tools that they need to interact with students. And as you'll see when we look at the teacher feedback, there were a couple of mitigating factors that made that difficult, I think. One was just the fact that when we shut down very suddenly in March and had to very quickly devise a way to put devices in students' hands and have teachers take what they were doing in the classroom and convert that, if you will, to something that could be done by remote. That was very difficult work to do, and they had very little guidance to do it. We supported them as best we could, but they really just had to very quickly make it happen. And because work was not being graded in Q4, there were a lot of students that didn't participate. And so the communication was disjointed. But we think that we have a plan for that to be much more robust moving forward. So to summarize, we did get a lot of anecdotal narrative feedback from parents as well. We were able to look into trends. The majority of them want their kids back in school. Most of them that responded said that they had pretty good resources for remote learning. They do acknowledge that there are going to be learning gaps, and they desire more interaction with teachers, communication, and specifically feedback on assignments as it's given. They do want help. We asked parents to rate or to prioritize the kinds of ways that we could support them in several different ways. And these were the two that really bubbled up for the parents that responded. They want us to help them identify the things that their kids missed, essentially. What are the things that my child needs to learn from the spring? And specifically help and facilitation, helping them learn by remote. Most parents really want to be a part of that. They don't necessarily know how. And so they want us to work with them on that. And then certainly they have concerns about safety. Yes, I want my kids back in school, but I want to make sure that my kids are safe. So this is what they told us. Let's look at what our teachers and staff said. We got 70 responses from our employees, the majority of them teachers, as you can see, and the majority of those teachers from the elementary school. What percentage of your students do you believe remained engaged during the remote learning during Q4? Majority of them, so the green, only a few, and the yellow, about half. So the majority of students, from the teacher's perspective, did not stay engaged during what we did in the spring. And that is in alignment with what our parents said as well. So we asked our teachers for some specific feedback on how it went for remote learning. And you can see they rated these things pretty high, all of them. So one, did you get timely information? Did you feel like the information that you had gave you the ability to plan and prepare for the expectations? Did you feel like expectations, I should say teachers, they were clear and reasonable? Do you feel like students had ample opportunity to stay engaged and to keep learning? Did you feel supported by leadership? Do you now feel more comfortable to integrate virtual learning into your classroom opportunities with students now that that was the lowest, well, that was next to the lowest. Did you feel like you had the tools necessary to provide learning for students? I think a combination of some of our teachers had a hard time with internet access at home, and we've tried to ameliorate those, but I think we still have a couple of situations that we're still trying to work through, as well as, you know, like I already said, teachers were just kind of thrust into this place where they had to put together online learning and use the different platforms that we had available. They weren't necessarily streamlined. And so I think that was a struggle. And then how did you feel like the division communicated with you? These are all high, and I think they probably are reflective of two things. One is, I think we worked really well as a school division, all of the staff together, the leaders, the teachers, everybody coming together to really work hard and to move quickly, to adapt. And I think this also reflects the fact that teachers tend to be very positive and optimistic. They do. The real value, or I should say another valuable component of the surveys, is that we got a lot of very specific and very detailed responses from teachers who went a little bit farther in letting us know. And what you can see as you look through these different comments, biggest challenge, I didn't feel like I was doing enough. I wasn't able to control the learning of my students. Nothing can replace being together in the physical classroom. No internet at home. I was trying to make lessons that would be easy and not add to the frustration already in place. Life and home, considering what was going on in people's families. Maintaining student interest who didn't think they had to complete any of the work. So you can see there was streamlining platforms. There were a lot of different technology platforms that people had to navigate. I know that was frustrating to parents as well. Student participation, accountability. Students weren't held accountable, and so some of them just didn't show up. Lack of involvement. Didn't have a whole lot of interaction with students. I thought this comment really summarized what you see in a lot of these comments. This is the last one I'll share. But I just highlighted the parts of this. I won't read it all to you, but what I saw trending in a lot of the feedback we got from our teachers was a real concern for what I'm going to call maybe the socio-emotional aspect of the impact on students. You can see this is hard for some students because they're separated, they're isolated. I'm worried about the ability to form a relationship with kids if we're virtual. Virtual meetings can be hard for kids that are shy. They don't necessarily want to be on camera and be front and center talking to a bunch of people that they can't see. So this is something that's definitely on our teachers' minds appropriately. If I'd summarize that feedback, I think our teachers really want us to be clear. Even though they rated us high on were the expectations clear, I did see a lot of commentary that we just need to be really clear about what's expected. We can't have teacher A approaching this differently than teacher B, but we need to have very clear expectations for what all of our teachers will be doing and how we're going to support them doing those things when we move forward in August. We need to streamline our technology formats and the different programs that are available. They're concerned about learning gaps. They're concerned about students being motivated when they're remote at home. They desire a stronger partnership, I think these are my words, but I'm trying to summarize what all of them said, with parents for remote learning. I think some of our teachers seem to feel like when they were trying to work with kids by remote and virtually, is that maybe parents, many of the parents just kind of looked at this as that they're not being graded, they're not being held accountable. We're maybe not going to require that our kids do this. And so I think teachers felt a little bit out on a limb. They couldn't reach through the screen and have the kids come in and engage with them, but they really wanted to. So I think if teachers and parents can approach August with a more clear understanding of how they can work together to make sure that kids stay engaged during remote. That's my best way of summarizing all those comments. Concerned about mental health and well-being of students, and they really need reliable tools and resources to make this all work. I've got a lot of information to share, so I am going to move on through here, but if any board members have any questions or want to go further, please stop me. So as I said, the health plan is a required component of this, and there are lots and lots of details contained in this health plan. I'm actually going to pull this up and move through a lot of this because I think it'll answer a lot of questions. The health plan is something that we've had to submit before we can do any face-to-face programming. It goes to the Department of Health. We have worked with a lot of different people to put this plan together. I'm going to show you some of the members that have been a part of our task force that's been meeting, at least groups of this task force, twice a week since March. And others were brought in for very specialized conversations. We did partner with the Three Rivers Health District and Dr. Williams and his staff, who joined us a couple of times. And certainly I've been communicating with Dr. Williams quite a bit on several components of this plan. So you can see there are a lot of people that were involved in considering all these issues. I do want to point out specifically our nurses joined us. They have very specialized expertise, obviously, in school health that none of the rest of us have. The Department of Health joined us a couple of times, and our laser clean staff. I'm going to highlight the work that they've been doing later in this presentation, but our school cleaning folks, that's the company that we work with, have been very involved in helping us think through considerations, and they have been very specifically and intently pursuing ways that they can make sure that our buildings are clean and safe. So these components, again, I don't want to read this to everybody. I'm just going to highlight some aspects of it, but we will be monitoring absences, obviously, and they wanted to make sure that we had a plan for that. And any confirmed cases will work directly with the health department. I'll say more about that here in a few minutes. Communication is going to be key, and there's going to be orientation and training for everybody, students and staff, regarding ways that we can mitigate the risk of COVID. That's hand hygiene, respiratory etiquette, just the way we conduct ourselves. We're going to have to be very intentional about teaching our students how to do that. The way we can use face coverings when they're required, physical distancing, staying home when we're sick, and then plans for how to communicate any cases that get detected or any outbreaks, both in Middlesex or even in surrounding counties where we might need to enact that relationship with Three Rivers. Please stop me if you want to go deeper in any areas of this plan. So the use of PPE and personal protective equipment has been a big part of some of the things that we've had to decide, obviously. We've been obtaining lots of these supplies, and Laser Clean has been helping us get a lot of these supplies to make sure that we are prepared. This is basically just a list of the things so that parents know and that you know what we're trying to make sure that we have adequate supplies of in our schools. The disposable gowns and gloves that our nurses would use when they're treating people who look like they may be sick, those are ordered, but I understand they're back ordered and not available right now. So Laser Clean is trying to help us get our hands on the gloves, no pun intended, hands and gloves, but the gowns, we're working hard. Everybody in the state and the nation is looking for these items, as you can imagine. So in each school, we will have an isolation area. There's going to be a space specifically dedicated to people who look like or people who are exhibiting these symptoms. And we're going to use the CDC delineation, and that's here in this link. Anybody can access those online when we're caring for the sick, as well as when we're looking at the different symptoms and when we're teaching our students and our staff and educating them about these symptoms. We're going to use the information from the CDC. Obviously, it can be a challenge. This is something we've been working really hard on, is where is the isolation space in each school? I think we've got a good idea for where that's going to be, but I'm going to tell you where it is yet, because I think we're still working on that. But that's not because it's a secret. I just don't want misinformation being propagated. But I think in each school, we have located, and we will finalize probably this week, where that space will be and how that's going to function when the nurse is going to be trying to split time between the clinic, where distribution of medicine and just treating other things that they normally would treat is happening, as well as tending to somebody who may be in the isolation space, and then how to make sure that we're disinfecting those spaces intermittently throughout the day, and certainly after they're used. So a big part of the plan, of course, is promoting behaviors. And here's where I'd like to share some specific decision points that we've made. As I said, all staff and students are going to be trained. We have materials that are going to be provided to us by the Virginia Department of Health. And in each school, we're going to provide those materials ahead of time. And then each school will schedule follow-up times for the staff, at least, to be with the school nurse and have almost like a question and answer session about those materials, so that everybody gets the same information. And then they're also working on how to do that with our students as well, both in school as well as what we would send out to families to make available to families in the community. We'll use signage and posters, as we're required to, throughout the school to promote these healthy hygiene habits. We believe that that a really effective strategy, frankly, is hand washing, and always has been hand washing. And so we really want to encourage that. And as part of that, as you'll see later, we have ordered some portable, hand washing stations to go in each of the schools at different points throughout the schools, so that if we're encouraging students to wash their hands frequently, we don't want the only way they can do that is to go into a restroom where there's only a couple of sinks. And so we're going to make more spaces available and accessible to both staff and students in the schools to make sure that's happening. As everybody probably is aware, face coverings and the use of masks is a huge discussion point. We are going to provide masks to each school. We've ordered several thousand of them, and we have both disposable as well as the multi-layer cloth masks. We're going to distribute them to our staff, and we're going to use them when physical distancing can't be maintained. We are not mandating masks in the schools. I think that's an important point because some people may be wondering about that. And I know that there are parents who feel strongly that they need to be mandated, and there are others who feel strongly that they should not be mandated. As I shared with you, we're working really hard to follow the recommendations and the advice of the CDC, the Department of Health, the Association of Pediatrics. We're working with the Department of Education. We're following the guidelines in the triple R book, if you will, the Recover, Redesign, Restart. But at the end of the day, those guidelines have to turn into a decision point. And we work with our staff and our nurses and our principals to make the decision that we believe is best for our community and for our staff. We don't want anybody to be at risk, but there are several other mitigating factors other than just the use of a face covering to protect against infection that we have to consider, especially when we're working with young children. We're working with children who need to see facial expressions and who need to read lips and who need to be able to interact with their teachers in a way that face coverings sometimes may not allow them to. That said, we're not preventing face coverings. Certainly, people can wear face coverings all day in the school if they choose. And anytime physical distancing of at least 6 feet will not be able to be maintained, we're going to require them and we're going to provide them. An example would be a teacher who has to work with students at a small kidney table that can't be 6 feet apart. We're all going to have masks in those considerations. And we have ordered some masks that are clear, that do allow for that, at least the mouth to be seen, and to forming words to be seen, and facial expressions to be seen. So we're doing everything we can to do what makes sense, but I do want to be clear about that. Our plan at this point does not involve mandating that everybody in the school at all times will wear face coverings. We'll use them when physical distancing can't be maintained. Let's talk about physical distancing, because this is one point where the different organizations do disagree a little bit. Many of you may have seen most of the advice that we've been getting, and what the Department of Health and the Department of Education has been requiring, is that we use the 6 foot determination, at least 6 foot. And what that advice says is essentially prolonged exposure to an individual. And the way the CDC defines that is at least 15 minutes. So 15 minutes of exposure to another individual within 6 feet is when we get the most risk. And so we're trying to mitigate that, and then also work in the, or at least to consider the advice of the Association of Pediatrics, which says that in many populations, especially with the younger ones, 3 to 6 feet is optimal. And even in those cases, only when the only other option is not remote learning. So we do have a lot of dispositions that we're trying to work through. What we have designed is a plan and a schedule that reduces class sizes, reduces bus loads, and allows the normal school operation. And I'll share more about what that operation looks like as we move through here. But we're designing a plan that, as much as possible, enables physical distancing of at least 6 feet, so that masks don't have to be required. And in those cases where it's less than 6 feet, we're going to require them. So we're maintaining the 6 foot recommendation, with the exception of, this is my segue into transportation, with the exception of our bus ridership, potentially. One of the most difficult logistical considerations we've had concerns transportation. How can we get in a traditional 55 passenger bus, maintaining 6 feet of social distance, you now can only put 10 to 12 students on the bus? How in the world can we get kids to school when we can only get all our buses on the road at one time, about 200 students being transported? So the first thing we've had to do is to go through and try to hand schedule our students in such a way that we can see how many students are going to actually require the buses. We asked on that first parent survey that we got 340 some responses to. That wasn't enough. We had to hear from every single parent to know how to do our bus ridership assignments. And so we actually put out another survey, and then members of our team made several hundred, if not thousands, of phone calls to every single family that didn't respond to find out how many students do we actually know that will need bus ridership. So that's still evolving. We do know the number, but until we know how they're going to be scheduled, we can't put those bus assignments together. And so here's, I guess, the point of transportation and physical distancing and masks is, if the number of students that we assign to buses is such that we can maintain the 6 foot social distancing, we will not have to require face coverings on the buses. If we cannot, then we would fall back to the default of the American Association of Pediatrics. And I will say that Virginia Department of Health has now adopted this same consideration of 3 to 6 feet, as long as face coverings are required. So the reason we're not requiring them in school is that we're designing a program that enables at least 6 foot of social distance. And when it isn't, we're requiring the face coverings. We may have to require them on the bus if we have to assign students to the buses in less than 6 feet. So if we have to use the 3 to 6, We can do that and still be in compliance with the CDC and the Department of Health, but only if we require face masks. And again, we'll be providing them. And we're also putting together a program where we'll be disinfecting our buses before and after each use, as well as our cars. Okay. Food service. We're going to prepare meals in the cafeteria, but students are not going to come through the line at any of the 3 schools. What we're going to do at the elementary school is place them in secure bags. We're going to distribute them to the classrooms. Students will stay in their cohort and will eat lunch in that same cohort, in that room, meals delivered that way. The middle school is actually going to use the cafeteria, and because of their size, they can do this. Use the cafeteria, but they won't be going through the line. So there'll still be a distribution similar to the elementary school, but students will be able to be scheduled in such a way that they're socially distant in the cafeteria, but will be able to use that space. Similarly, at the high school, they will do something just like that, but they'll use the cafeteria as well as the library and media center as a place where students can eat their meals and be in more of a social setting, still being socially distant from one another. Large group gatherings. The phased guidance from the governor is very prescriptive about this. No gatherings in phase 3. And I guess I should have said, I apologize. This whole plan, all of our work has been under the assumption that August 24th will be opening school in phase 3. Should that not be the case, then there'll be some other planning or some other considerations that will come. But all of this assumes that we'll be in phase 3 or beyond phase 3, which may be less restrictive. So phase 3, the governor's order with phase 3, no gatherings of more than 250 people, whether that's indoor or outdoor for schools, except with recess. Recess has to be limited. And again, this is not a Middlesex rule. This is a governor's order to no more than 50. So we're scheduling it in such a way as to try to restrict as much as possible students, different cohort groups of students mixing with one another, understanding that they do need an opportunity to socialize. They do need an opportunity to play. And so we'll emphasize physical distancing and scheduling in such a way that we limit exposure and thereby mitigate risk as much as we can. I'm not going to go through, unless board members you'd like me to, and I'm happy to. Our plan does consider all these aspects specific to sports, extracurricular activities, but because we're waiting on the VHSL right now to finish its work, we really aren't doing this. Extracurricular clubs are allowed to meet as long as physical distancing is in place and other mitigation strategies, but we aren't really beginning athletics until we hear more from the VHSL. They've met twice, and both times they've said, essentially, we need to go back and we need to plan a little more. So I'm not necessarily going to go into all this, but I do want you to know that we have put together a plan that is compliant with the governor's order, as well as considers how we would pursue athletics if and when we get to that point in a way that is safe and in compliance.
Mr. Hahn has a webinar on Thursday. Do you think he's going to give any guidelines then, or is it just a talk session?
I think that's a great question, and honestly, I don't know. I know they're working really hard, but every time they come out with some specifics, they really, I think, they run into so much, these are my words, but I think they run into so much controversy and so many contingencies that they have to go back to the drawing board at some point. So I wouldn't be surprised if they come out with some more guidelines, but I don't know that. I don't have any kind of information about what that is going to entail. It's a good question.
Dr. Greg.
Yes, sir.
I've had been out sometime, and I've run into several people, and they didn't have on a mask. And I asked the question why they didn't have on, and they actually had a condition that where they could not wear the mask. And it is more difficult to breathe when you're walking and, you know, any activities through that mask. What are you having in place to where if we run into that type of situation that we can handle?
Well, what we're saying with the masks is, so we're going to provide them, we're going to require them when physical distancing can't be maintained, and then as medically appropriate. There are people with conditions, there are students with conditions, there's asthma, there are other considerations that make it difficult, if not impossible. And that's why we're really trying to plan a program that enables physical distancing so that we don't have to require them. I think the difficulty that we would have is if we have to schedule students in such a way on the buses that we're 3 to 6 feet and thereby have to require face coverings. I think we'd have to handle on an individual basis a student that couldn't wear them. We may have to put them on a different bus or a different situation.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because those situations could arise.
Absolutely, I think they will. Yeah. Okay, so just another highlight that students will remain in their classroom or with their cohort group as much as possible. We're going to try to limit switching classes, understanding at the high school that's a whole different ballgame than it is at the elementary school. They really have to switch classes to a degree, and we won't be doing field trips. During phase 3. So maintaining a healthy environment, staff and student health assessments. We're going to ask all staff members to complete a health screening prior to coming to work every day. We're going to provide the screening to them, and we're going to ask them to do that each day. At this time, we are not doing any kind of a distribution where where staff members complete a form or turn in any kind of documentation about that. We're going to provide it with them and ask them to do it before they come to work. Similarly, with student health screenings, we had a lot of conversation about this, and specifically with the Three Rivers health staff. A lot of the planning I'm seeing in other places with student health screenings had to do with taking temperatures. And there are a lot of places right now that you'll see when you go in, they'll take your temperature before you go in using the infrared touchless thermometer, which is certainly a way to screen. The problem with it when we're considering school is that even though we have those thermometers ordered and we're going to have them available at the schools as an initial screening, they're not always accurate. One of our nurses explained to me that, you know, a student that has long bangs that's been running around for a few minutes will look like they have a fever of 100 and 101 when they don't, using the infrared. So that's why we've ordered the hospital grade thermometers. So we're putting together a sample checklist with the communication and the information that we're giving to all of our stakeholders, if you will, our families, our students, as well as our teachers about the symptoms. And we're going to give them a sample checklist, and we're going to ask our families to do that, to monitor their health using that checklist at home. We are going to monitor them when they come to school. And certainly if they show any signs of the symptoms, our nurses will do a more thorough health screening in the school clinic. As you know, there are certain people who will be asymptomatic, and none of those screenings will help us mitigate that risk. And so there is a certain degree where we have to really rely on families to monitor their children's health at home and to keep their children home if they're sick. We will also monitor it at school, but we will not be lining all the kids up outside of the school building and doing infrared forehead checks before they walk in. When we met with our nurses and we met with Three Rivers, I'm not saying that Three Rivers said we shouldn't do that. They didn't say we should do that. They just explained that that really is not going to be an effective way for you to screen for this illness. It's not going to catch any of the asymptomatics. And if you read the Association of Pediatrics report, the the challenges with logistics of several hundred children trying to get into a school building and doing that do not, the benefit of it does not outweigh the challenges, essentially is what I'm saying. So that's how we're going to handle health screenings. We're going to do them. We're going to do them every day, and we'll do them with a greater degree maybe of comprehensibility at the school if there's any symptoms. Any questions on that? I know that's been both of those. It's been kind of a big point of consideration for people. So there are other aspects of this plan. I feel like this is kind of a long presentation, so I don't want to prolong it. I did want to highlight that we have already ordered and secured the portable hand washing stations. I think 3 or maybe 4 in each school facility. We'll put them in different places to make sure that that we really promote the hand washing, because we think that is a huge, significant influence over the spread of this and all of the other things, the germs that go through our schools every year. So this is a section where we essentially outline how we're going to handle those at a higher risk. The CDC has put definitions together of those that are a higher risk of illness from COVID than others. And so basically these are the kinds of things that we're going to do in those cases should they arise. It involves remote learning and different considerations, modification of job duties, teleworking, remote instruction for staff. We will not be allowing or accepting visitors, volunteers during phase 3, except in isolated cases. And then this is a section on what are we going to do if somebody's sick? What if somebody at school does have a fever? What if the infrared shows they have a fever? And then we go back and the school nurse uses the hospital grade thermometer and we confirm, yes, absolutely, there is a fever. And this is just a section that talks about how we're going to do that, how we're going to clean and disinfect, how we're going to communicate with Three Rivers if we need to. And then finally, what kind of considerations have we considered that could cause schools to close? A regression of phases. If the governor puts us back in phase 1, obviously we'll be closed. If there's an increase in cases in Middlesex, or there's an increase in cases in a neighboring division, that could cause us to consider that. And certainly if the local health department recommended it. So that is our health plan. Board members, do you have any questions or anything you want me to go into more detail before I go back to my other presentation?
Well, I am pleased with your presentation.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I know that it's, as we see people out in the community, we're all taking it more serious than we did in the beginning. And I think that's going to be helpful.
Yes, sir. Thank
And
you.
your plan is going to be on our website?
Yes. The health plan I just talked about will be available on the website. And then we're going to, this presentation that I'm doing now will be on the website, but we're going to put together communication that's a little more accessible to families that we can distribute and send home. And I'll talk to you a little bit about how we're going to do that here in just a minute. I know this has been long, but I'm actually not through. I've got to do a few more slides. So let's talk about the schedule that we're proposing. So in order to achieve the physical distancing required, that alone, physical distancing really does dictate the schedule to a large degree. We looked at how we could do this in a way to utilize our classrooms. We examined all of our spaces to determine what's the new capacity of our classrooms and our schools and our buses, given the physical distancing requirements, trying to avoid requiring the masks, not discouraging masks, but trying to keep us out of a situation where we have to require that everybody wear the face coverings because of the impact that that could have on instruction and on other aspects of the school. So essentially, we put two groups. We're proposing to split our student body into two student groups at each school. So there'll be a group A and a group B, and maybe between now and August we'll come up with a creative name for those groups. But group A and B at the elementary school, at the other two, and you can just see with group A, we'll have one group face-to-face on Monday while the other one's doing remote learning at home. Tuesday, they'll basically switch. Wednesday, everybody will do remote learning at home. And I'll tell you why we did that. Thursday, they'll switch again. And the group that was in person on Monday will be in person again on Thursday. And then they switch on Friday. So all students have 2 days of face-to-face learning and 3 days of remote learning each week to begin with in August. We looked at a couple of different models, and I will tell you that I've been in very close communication with other divisions close by as we've put these plans together. Everybody isn't considering this, but most everybody is considering something like this. Some people are doing weeks, so maybe group A will go for a whole week and then flip-flop. Some are doing AB days. There are different ways. The reason we chose this, all of our decisions we try to make with instruction in mind. And instructionally, given the fact that parents and teachers express so much concern over a lack of student engagement during remote learning. Now, one thing is going to be very different about that in the fall than it was in March, and that is that everything's going to be required. It's going to be graded. It's going to be for credit. So there's a very different expectation than there was in March. But still, we didn't want kids to go too long with virtual instruction before they came back and had a personal connection with their teacher about what happened during remote learning. So that's one thing in mind. Why do we have a teacher workday? Our teachers, I can't say enough about how much our teachers have done to prepare themselves and to plan, from participating in 20 hours of professional learning during the month of June, to better understand how to use Canvas and how to use Virtual Virginia, to the professional learning that's happening just at the schools, apart from division-wide initiatives. They're really working hard. And the reality is they're going to have to be planning lessons for face-to-face as well as virtual. We're going to have to be doing assessments to see where students are. And then there are probably some instructional implications when we see the gaps that exist that aren't even a part of this plan. They won't necessarily influence this schedule, but they will have an impact on teachers' planning. And we really wanted to begin the year with at least one day where they could address that. So we wanted to make sure that students didn't go several days without connecting face-to-face with the teacher. We wanted to make sure there was a virtual workday or a teacher workday. And the reason we did it on Wednesday was in consultation with our laser clean professionals. They want to have as much opportunity to do a deep cleaning, disinfecting of the school as possible. And so when you have 2 days over the weekend, and then 2 days of somebody being in the school, and then you can have another deep clean in the middle of the week, that really limits the time that school would be operating without a deep disinfecting clean. So that's the purpose for us going with this program. I just made a little note. There's certain very small populations of students that could be coming every day. And I don't want to go into too many details there to reveal personal information, but there could be things mandated through an IEP that would require somebody to come every day. And if we could still maintain the physical distancing, we'd be able to do that. And then with regional programs, Mr. Goforth brought up Bridging Communities. Bridging Communities obviously serves 6 school divisions. Middlesex is one of them. And it's very unlikely that all 6 of those divisions are going to have the same schedule. So Bridging is going to have to come up with something that, to the best ability, is accessible to all 6 of those, but probably won't line up perfectly. So we do know that we will probably be having to schedule individually for those students, and to do it in a way that whichever group they're in, we aren't overloading them with what they're doing on the day that they are in Middlesex, if that makes sense. I actually had a meeting with the bridging director on Thursday to talk about this. And so she really can't finalize her schedule until the other 6 divisions do, but she's definitely working hard to do that. Similarly, the Chesapeake Bay Governor School has put together a schedule, and they're trying to group divisions. So New Kent and Middlesex are going to be grouped together, but there's still going to be some individual scheduling that's not going to line up with everybody else for the Chesapeake Bay Governor School students. So we'll just have to handle those individually. Let's look at some operational considerations. I've already talked about transportation being the most difficult. So now that I've shown you that schedule, until we know who's in Group A and who's in Group B, and until we knew who of those students needed transportation, we really can't schedule the buses. So that's ongoing. We're working on, our principals got together with Dr. Seitz last week, 2 full days to essentially hand schedule every student. We're trying to keep families going on the same days and trying to be mindful of lots of different considerations with every single child. And so as they complete that, we'll be able to put our bus transportation together. But that still is hinging on how many students will need buses and whether or not we'll be able to accomplish the 6 feet, or we'll have to drop back to 3 to 6 feet in every other seat, as the Department of Health has recently blessed, if you will. Meals, I think I've covered meals. I did want to let you know that Laser Clean has been meeting with us and has done an exceptional job of disinfecting our schools. They have been working throughout the shutdown and all through the summer to make sure that not only are our schools clean, but that they are actually rehearsing the protocol that they're going to put in place in order to do intermittent cleaning throughout the day. And that's an ongoing communication that we have with them. I won't say that's finalized right now, but we have talked about putting together a kit, if you will, of cleaning supplies for every classroom so that teachers and students can be involved in that throughout the day. And then they're working with our principals to schedule times. I know one of the things they're doing right now is actually going in and choosing random classrooms and disinfecting them so that they know about how long that takes, so that we can see how can we do that throughout the day? How can we capitalize on class changes and natural students moving to recess, for example, to make sure that our schools are clean. I feel confident in saying that there aren't any cleaner schools in Virginia than ours, and it's because of the professionalism and the expertise that Laser Clean is bringing to the table. They've been exceptional partners, and they continue to work with us and to help us to navigate this together. So one of the things we're going to, let me save this, I guess, communication protocol. Putting together the ways that we're going to communicate. The people that responded, I think both teachers and staff and parents felt pretty good about the communication that they've gotten from the division, but we need to make sure that we have everything in place to make sure everybody's on board and informed as this develops. We're not anticipating this to be the way we do school all year. We're anticipating this is the way we can honor our opening August 24th as scheduled, comply with the phase 3 governor's order and other requirements, but hopefully transition to what's next beyond phase 3 as soon as we're allowed to do that. And then there's logistical components to making sure that we can support the remote learning. I told you that we had some devices on order that we're waiting for, and we have a couple of teachers that we're still trying to find ways to get them more internet access at home. And then the health screening protocol that we put together and get out there. Those are the big logistical operational concerns. And with instruction. So we are pursuing a hybrid model. There's going to be face-to-face and remote learning. Social distancing, as I indicated, really dictates the fact that we have to reduce class sizes and thereby schedule the AB day model. The big component that's new is the requirement to introduce new instruction. And I don't want to get into the weeds too much, just simply because I've been talking for a long time. But in March, when we shut down, there was a need for us to do continuity of learning. We wanted to continue students progressing, but we were actually not allowed to deliver new instruction or to assign grades for instruction during that time because of the inequitable access that students had at home, students that didn't have IEP accommodations in place, students that had language barriers that we weren't able to mitigate, students that didn't have internet at home. So logistically, we're trying to get over those hurdles because the requirement now is in March, you weren't allowed to do it. Now in August, you have to do it. And so that is a big difference. And that expectation and that environment, while I think all of us on the school side would have loved for students to have engaged in what happened during the shutdown, there were students who did not participate because they weren't getting a grade for it. And so we want to make sure that we communicate that's all different now. That's very different. And so we've partnered with Virtual Virginia, and we do have a learning management system that we're going to be implementing. Our teachers have been training on that. We have some students in summer school who've been working in that and just getting familiar with our 8th graders, for example, working with Canvas. And so we're going to have a much more robust platform. And I guess the thing that I would say to a parent who's listening that might be thinking, what's different? What's going to be different in August that was different than what we had in March, is that Virtual Virginia is a program where licensed teachers have built very thorough, comprehensive courses. There's video instruction. There's all kinds of resources embedded. There are assignments, and those are all going to be handed to our teachers along with the training to use Canvas to take those platforms and use them. They can take those and they can modify them. They can take them and say, wow, that was great. I'm not going to use that. I'm going to build my own. And so what we're going to have is students involved in very robust lessons, not, for lack of a better way of explaining it, students aren't going to go into Google Classroom and fill out a worksheet. Students are going to have a lot of work to do. Virtual Virginia is kind of the vehicle, but our teachers really are the drivers and the engines behind that and the work that they're doing. And again, I just want to put out another plug for the hard work that they've done over the summer and are still doing to prepare themselves to do that. So I do think it's going to be a very different experience for our students. We are going to have to rely on our parents to engage them and to, in some cases, whatever happens to motivate the child to do it at home. Our teachers will not be able to reach through the screen and do that. Our teachers won't have access to their students other than through the remote learning. And so if the only motivator is the fact that a grade's going to be assigned, then maybe that's the motivator. But we do have some students, as we all know, that aren't motivated by grades. They aren't motivated by graduation. And the same challenges that exist for our teachers today in school, motivating those students, will exist when they're doing work at home. And we're going to have to rely on our parents to help us with that. That said, I do think we're going to have, I keep using the word robust, but we're going to have a much more thorough, comprehensive program of communicating with students and with our parents in the new platform that we roll out in August, that we've been able to design and plan for much more than we could when suddenly on a Friday in March, we just understood that our schools were being shut down. We've had lots of time to do that. So we're having to adjust our curriculum and our pacing quite a bit in order to revise it to support the work that was missed in March, but also keep students progressing. And to do that in an environment where students are only in person with us 2 days a week to begin with is going to be a challenge. And this is a reminder to anybody who's listening. It was a good reminder for me a couple of weeks ago to just remember that all these plans that we're putting together that involve mitigation is just that. It's minimizing risk. It's maximizing the ability for us to progress learning but none of this is optimal, and it is not eliminating risk. We can't eliminate risk, and we can't fully do everything that we would like to be able to do with everybody in person with us every day. So we're trying our best to put together what is going to keep us advancing while we're under the restrictions that we're under. And when those restrictions are lifted, we'll pursue more opportunities as we're able to. So face-to-face will be intermittent with remote learning. In March, remote learning was all there was. And you could have some email communication, certainly, but students are going to do remote learning, and then they're going to be in the classroom the next day or the next couple of days. So that's going to be different. There'll be a lot more feedback and interaction with our teachers. So again, this is getting long. So any questions about this? Let me just real quickly maybe end with this. What's next in the immediate? This isn't everything we have to do, but at least for now, what we know we need to do is expand our task force to include our teachers, and not just our teachers, but we do need to make sure that teachers get their eyes on our plan and our schedule, and they have an opportunity to interact with us and give us some feedback. They're going to see things that we can't see as leaders. And so we're going to, with the school board's blessing, are moving forward with this direction. We're going to expand that group and have some of our teachers weigh in. They've been doing that at the school level already, but we want to make sure that we have them at the table when we're making these division-wide decisions. We'll complete our student assignments, who's in Group A and who's in Group B, and then we'll be able to complete our bus assignments. We'll submit the health and reopening plan. In addition to the health plan, we need to put together another comprehensive plan on reopening, and that has to be submitted to the Virginia Department of Education 15 days prior to opening. So we'll be working on that. We'll continue planning our training and our teacher support. That's already happened, but it's going to be ongoing now and throughout the year. So we'll keep doing that. We do need to build our modules on how we're going to train and educate our staff and our students about COVID symptoms and healthy hygiene in schools. We need to obtain these Chromebooks and figure out a distribution for those devices. We also have a grant from our solar partner, Sun Tribe, to build what's called a wireless on wheels hotspot. You may have seen some news in Louisa County where they devised, I think they're about 8 feet and they're on wheels and they can be put at different spots in the county. With that grant from Sun Tribe, we're going to pursue our own ability to build those. Those aren't being built and handed to us. They're basically just saying, here's some money if you want to figure it out. So I do know that we have some people that I'm sure can help us with that. So I think that we'll be able to put at least some additional wireless access points throughout the county to further help connect students. And then the last thing I'll say is with communication, what we'd like to do, pending approval to move forward as I've outlined this plan, is put together several video communication, I'll call them modules, video clips, where we give students and parents and staff members the ability to see us talking about, here's how we're going to keep our schools clean. Here's what instruction is going to look like with virtual Virginia and in-person learning. This is what you can expect to see when you get on a school bus. Here's how we're going to handle recess and all these different components. And so we hope to put these videos together in the next coming weeks so that we can really give families a very clear picture of what school is going to look like when we open August 24th. I'm sure I've left some things out, and I'd be happy to invite other members of our team to chime in who've been at the table, but you've probably been listening long enough. I guess, Dr. Seitz, can you think of anything really glaring that I left out that I really need to put in here? And otherwise, I'll turn it back over to you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, I think you've done a great job in trying to cover everything that we've been working on without, and I know it may not have all the specifics maybe that everybody needs, but they are, I would add that they are forthcoming. And I think this was a great overview of the work that the team has done so far.
Okay, Madam Chair, that's, so the specific request is for the board to approve our moving forward with this plan and the planning that's going to be associated with the direction of what we've shared so far.
All right, Dr. Gretz, thank you for your plan overview. I feel like I've run about 6 miles just listening to all the things that you all have actually done. It is, I just can't imagine all the planning that you have led, you and Dr. Seitz and your team. It's extraordinary. Thank you. Is there a motion from the board to approve the school reopening plan?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions or comments board members might have at this time for Dr. Gretz?
I did notice a comment at the bottom. How does this pertain to students with special needs? And I assume they're talking about their IEP, which he did not address, but it will be addressed individually, I assume.
Yeah, all of our IEPs are, and I don't know if Ms. Velez, do you want to weigh in here? You're kind of on the spot with that, but that definitely has been a huge part of our planning and our considerations that she's been working with our principals and teachers on.
It is individually determined per child. So you have to sit down with the IEP team and make the determination on whether or not the student or the person's child requires more in school. And it will all be done individually based on their specific needs and their specific disability categories. I hope that answered their question. If not, they're welcome to contact me. I'm at the school board office, so I'm happy to speak with any parent.
Any other board members? As I have said on many occasions, this is there are no perfect answers to the current health crisis that we're in. And I think you all have put together certainly an excellent place to start for our school system. And if we all work together, I think this is going to work. And hopefully we'll eventually go into a situation where we're all back together again. But we do have to work together. We all have to understand we all have our health things that we need to do to be careful. And I hope our children will be able to understand that, because I know it's going to be tough for them to understand all these protocols that have been put in place. But I'm sure with all of the great work that you all have done and our teachers have been doing, and then the support of the parents, this is going to work. Thank you. All right, if there are no more comments, all those in favor of the motion to accept the school reopening plan, please say so by indicating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All right, any opposed? Thank you, Dr. Gretz. All right, we have these school board policy revisions on second reading. Is there a motion to approve on second reading policies listed as A through T?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions, further questions about these? All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Now on the revision.
Thank you for the job that you're doing here too, and all of our staff, because you have taken it seriously, which is very important.
Yes, it is. It's very important. On line item 4 here, these are policies on first reading. We'd like to pull H, I believe it is, which is JED, student absences, excuses, and dismissals. There, that policy, the new policy, has some restriction, has a line that restricts principal in being able to approve days out because of internships, and we want to take that out and write our own line for that. So what I'd like to do is pull that one and have Dr. Gretz probably pull apart from the current policy and put in this one, and then but anyway, have it revised for us based on our needs and bring it up in the August meeting.
Happy to do that.
Okay, so is there a motion to approve all with the exception of JED, student absences, excuses, and dismissals on first reading?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any question about these policies in here on first reading? Dr. Gretz, anything that you want to caution us about?
No, I don't think so. I mean, most of the policies continue to be small changes, semantic changes, you know, little grammatical things.
Right.
Maybe it's of interest on page 231 with the ongoing conversation that we're going to actually reference later in the meeting about the relationship between schools and law enforcement. They are specifically in the middle of that page. You'll see they're just addressing how law enforcement gets involved and how the principal does or doesn't report that involvement. But it doesn't really change anything that we're doing. I really don't, there's nothing in these policies that I would say
Okay.
has a
All right.
significant impact on our operations.
Okay. All right. All those in favor of approving the policies listed A through S with the exception of H, JED, on first reading indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay. So the next action item is the VSBA delegate and alternate for the convention. Are they seriously considering having a convention in November with all those people walking the halls like we have all these years?
I don't know. I don't know, but they want you to have a voting delegate either way.
They do. Dr. Shores, would you like to continue being our voting delegate?
Yes, I would do that.
All right. Is there a motion to approve Dr. Shores as our delegate?
So moved.
Since the two of us are voting, Dr. Shores, you are approved. There you go.
All right. Thank you, board members.
And I know Ms. Jordan wants us to have an alternate also. Hearing no volunteers, I guess I'll do that. Yes, I am looking at you. You may not be able to tell I'm looking at you, so forth, but I was.
If it makes it any easier, Ms. Sochak, I've been informed that it's probably going to be a virtual meeting, so someone doesn't have to physically be in Williamsburg.
Okay, that's good. All right, thank you.
If you want me to volunteer, I will, but I didn't even attend the meeting last year because I'm playing golf.
I remember that. Okay, Dr. Gretz, you had a few things you wanted to bring up about the advisory boards, plural.
Yeah, I just wanted to update the board, make sure we're all on the same page. This is something that we need to look at every year. And so I'll be brief about this, but our advisory committees are really, limit this here, sorry. They're really established in these two board policies, the one that establishes the committees, and then another one talks about school board committees. The only one, the overlap there is with the special education and the gifted committees. But it basically just says that the school board is going to establish advisory committees in special education, career and technical education, gifted education, school health advisory board, parent advisory council, which is specific to the federal programs, and then this safe and drug-free schools committee. And so I just wanted to, these are committees that I'm going to give you that existed last year. I'm not going to speak for we have staff members that lead them as consulting leaders from the school division. And I think in many cases, they'd like for these committees to continue since they really didn't finish last year. But I'll let them make those recommendations to us in a forthcoming meeting. But these are the committees as they exist and have been meeting. So the School Health Advisory Board is one that the requirement in our board policy is that they at least annually review the plan, but I know they meet more than annually. And these are folks who have been getting together. Mrs. Velez is the member of our team that coordinates the work of the Health Advisory Board. These folks in the Special Education Advisory need to meet at least biannually. There has to be at least a parent rep and a teacher rep, but it's open to more than just these three people. I think attendance is sporadic, but these are the folks that are actually on the board appointed committee. And then with our gifted advisory committee, again, they have to meet annually to approve the plan that they bring to the board, but I think they meet more than that, certainly throughout the year. And these are the folks that work with Katie Wilkins, our coordinator of gifted education. And this is our CTE Advisory Council. This is the Technical Education Committee that's addressed in board policy. This is led by the work of Melvina Robinson at the high school. And these folks meet quarterly, at least. Sometimes, like when we were planning our carpentry program, they would have special meetings to meet with us, but they meet 4 times a year otherwise. And so the Safe and Drug-Free Schools Committee that's established in board policy is one that I guess I have a question about. It's a group that was put together in 2014, and I'm not sure that they necessarily have been as active. In 2016, we put together a group of people, met at the middle school to have kind of an inaugural meeting, people specifically talking about school safety, a task force around school security and school safety. And I think there's probably some overlap, safe and drug-free schools. Certainly we all want safe schools and we want drug-free schools. That terminology is maybe associated with past legislation. And I think what we need to do, probably I need to lead this, and then we need to bring you a recommendation. Not that we get rid of one committee, but I think we need to consider, do we have two groups of people that maybe are tasked with something similar? They need to come together, whether we call it safe and drug-free schools or school security, school safety. But I think that is the status of that. But I do need to be candid that I don't think we have an active safe and drug-free schools committees so much as we do have a school security committee that's met.
Okay.
So again, that was really just an update. I just wanted everybody to be on the same page with what committees we have in place and how they've been operating.
Thank
Okay.
you. I was the one that requested that update. I just was concerned that if any committee had something they need to address to the board, they were given that opportunity. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay, at this time, the floor is open for public comment.
I've shared some questions with Dr. Kretz via the chat from the public.
Okay, thank you.
Let me take a look here. Oh, I see. Okay. So it is a little different environment. Obviously, when you're on a Zoom meeting with parents who have questions, that's maybe different than if they stood up in public comment. If they'd pose a question, it's not one that would necessarily be answered. I don't know how the board would want me to handle that. But let me just read these questions. So the first one is, will there be a procedure for parents entering the school to the main office in order to limit exposure when signing students in and out? Can this be done in the corridor or parents met at the door when picking up or dropping off students? And then another question from that same person, will Laser Clean be cleaning on the weekends? Madam Chair, if you want me to answer these questions, I can answer them, or we can get back to people, or however you want to do that. Like I said, it's a little different environment we're in.
It is definitely a different environment. I think since these are procedural questions, maybe you could quickly, because it sort of follows what your presentation was, maybe you could quickly answer.
I'm happy to. So the real question about how parents will get their kids and signed out, that's going to be done at the school, and they're putting those plans together. I can't tell you necessarily what they are, but I can tell you that yes, we will have a procedure. It's one that will communicate to people before we start, and if anybody sees problems with it, we'll have a way for people to give us input, and that's the best way I can answer that right now. It's a great question. Yes, Laser Clean will be cleaning intermittently, weekends, Wednesdays. They'll be working out a schedule to do that. Separate question, what about the children who are in special education classes? I think we addressed that. That one wasn't necessarily just to me. And then another one, I'm wondering if there'll be a survey or questionnaire going out to parents, giving them an option to choose a preference of A or B based on the parents' work schedules. We have not talked about doing a survey to everybody about that. I understand completely why the question's being asked, and do understand also that this is going to have a tremendous impact on people's work schedules. By the same token, we really can't personally schedule every child based on everybody's preference. I do think that they should, I think that parents should feel free to communicate those things. Certainly you can communicate it to me, or you can communicate it to a principal, but I don't want to give anybody the impression that we're allowing parents to say, I want to be an A or B. I think hardship cases, we want to consider those personally, but we can't logistically do that, just like we can't with the buses. There's no way we'll be able to do that. School supply list. Do we know any items at this point that will be new and different from normal school supply lists? I'm so glad that question came in. Looks like that's a public one from Lauren Wood. So I've been working with another couple of superintendents in the region on school supply lists that basically would be funded and provided to us by the River County's Community Foundation, that we can provide to students at school so that they'll have them there and they won't be sharing resources with other students. I don't have that finalized. It just came up last week, but I just wanted to make parents aware that we're pursuing that. Obviously, as soon as we get that nailed down, we'll be able to get that out to people. I think that might alleviate the need for people to purchase some school supplies if we're able to provide them and fund them through the grant. So I don't know right now if there's anything new on those lists, but it's a great question and we'll continue to monitor that. Those are all the questions that I've got in here.
Okay.
And I have no comments on YouTube or Facebook.
Okay. All right, thank you, Steve. I will close public comment at this time. Dr. Gretz, anything else you have for us in your report?
Well, I don't want to extend too long, but I do have a couple of things I wanted to mention to the board, and I'll keep them brief. But essentially, I wanted you to be aware that we have submitted an application to the School Innovation Grant, the Virginia Department of Education School Innovation Grant. All of our focus has been on mitigation strategies for COVID and reopening plans and how to deal with things specific to COVID. I just wanted to make everybody aware that life does go on for the schools with or without COVID, and that we're still pursuing the innovations that we've been working on. So this is money, this is $50,000 that would enable us to take some of the concepts that we implemented at Compass Academy, flexible scheduling, hybrid learning, so the ability for students to pick up some credit recovery and course recovery on their own, but in a supervised environment, community-based volunteer service learning and community-based work-based learning, internships, externships. It'll be able to support us taking those things and expanding them at the high school from what's already there. So we think that'll be a very positive thing for many students at the high school to be able to access. And we're very hopeful that we'll get that grant, since Dr. Seitz led us to being named a School Division of Innovation in the Innovation Network Partnership. And I think there's a forthcoming award that I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about. I don't even know if we've gotten it, but Dr. Seitz submitted that as well, and it's associated. So all these things that we're doing, we hope will just get us some more funding to pursue some of these great innovative practices that we're trying to bring for our students and our families. I wanted to update the board that we've got an ongoing conversation happening with certain members of our county administration, as well as supervisors, related to, if you remember when the plan was first introduced for the new bus garage. Now, there's no longer a plan for a new bus garage, but when that first happened, the plan was for the building that is in front of the bus garage to be moved across the street. And as I understand it, that is still in place whenever that happens. That is going to leave a older bus garage, the one we're currently in view. And in light of that being part of the new vision for the Cook's Corner revitalizing project, we had explored some ways that we could involve students in the community in dressing up the side of that building without spending money. And so there's some folks who've been working on that. How can we do that in a way that doesn't cost the county any money, but still is innovative? And so the Board of Supervisors met last week on Tuesday to officially kind of approve a plan to partner with a local artist who would come up with a Middlesex specific design. When I say Middlesex, I mean involving the life of the water community and probably oysters, and there are any number of things that could be featured there, and come up with a mural that would be painted on the side of the building that's facing General Puller Highway. The artist would paint the outline of the painting, and then they've asked to work with us if we'd like to involve our students. Our students and our art teachers could come in and essentially do almost like a paint by numbers, where the artist would supervise our class of students, whatever grade level, coloring in, if you will, the outline that the artist painted, and the result would be a beautiful mural. Wouldn't cost the county any money. The artist, I think, that they're talking to is willing to do this pro bono, and then involve our students. We don't have a plan for how to involve our students. I essentially just wanted you to be aware that this conversation is going on and that the Board of Supervisors talked about it, and seems like a very positive thing. So I just wanted you to be aware. And then I wanted to give you a little bit of an update on summer school. And as you know, when we were allowed to entertain summer school, we put out the invitation. At the elementary school, we invited about 75 people to participate in summer school, and we have 15 that took us up on that offer. So we invited 75. The invitation really was for anybody, but we could accommodate 75. We have 15 that are participating right now, doing remote and virtual activities in reading and math. They're using Virtual Virginia as well as some of the other Google Classroom activities. And then we have a few students at the elementary level that are receiving specialized in-person instruction. They're in that pre-K through 3 grade level range that we were allowed in phase 3 to serve on site. And so that program is going well. It's not as many students as we thought might want to be involved, but it's still a positive thing, and it's going well. And for various reasons, I think families did or didn't choose to access that. At the middle school, similarly, we were able to invite 20 students per grade level. So we could take 60 students involved in remedial reading and math activities. And we got 37 to participate. So 37 who are participating at the middle school level. There are live remote sessions that are happening with teachers, and teachers have been reaching out to set up one-on-one sessions with those 37 students as well. And they're reporting a lot of success with those one-on-one live sessions that they're having. I think that gives people a little glimpse of how things will be very different in the fall from what was happening in March and April. And they're using the technology well. There are a number of different platforms that they're using, but they're essentially working with Canvas, which is the learning management system that we're going to move forward with in August. So we do have some students that are getting their feet wet with that, and our teachers are using it as well. So that is a little update on summer school. And then the last thing I wanted to bring up really is new business. So maybe I should just conclude.
Okay.
Superintendent's.
All right. Thank you, sir. Is there any old business to come before the group? Any new business? Dr. Kretz.
The new business that I'm bringing up really has bubbled up out of some conversations that I've had with our school board members. And so the suggestion was that we talk about it here in the board meeting, and I ask for the board for some direction on how to move forward with this. There is a growing movement, if you will, in Virginia that is specific to, I guess, questioning the relationship between Virginia public schools and law enforcement through the school resource officer program. That program was established several years ago, and it's funded by the Department of Criminal Justice Services. And it provides for the local law enforcement to put law enforcement professionals in schools. There's a very specific training that those law enforcement professionals go through. And there's a training protocol that they go through, and there's a memorandum of understanding that exists. In one of the policies that you passed, it moved from 5 years to 2 years. So every 2 years that MOU is updated. So the movement that's happening, and the article I think that was brought to my attention was the National Teacher of the Year, who is a Virginia teacher, Rodney Robinson, had made an appeal for that funding to be eliminated and for the funding to be redirected into mental health. And specifically, that article cited problems that existed with SRO programs in schools, problems such as law enforcement professionals intimidating students, frivolous charges being implicated in students. He cited a student taking a pair of earbuds and being charged with a felony, and basically called for it to be eliminated because it was a negative impact on students. The relationship was not a good one. And so the conversations that we had were not related to Rodney Robinson's experience or the validity of his comments, but rather, and I don't want to make this personal about Rodney, but the people who are initiating this are not people who have been to the schools in Middlesex. They've never met our students and our principals or our school resource officers. They have no idea if those things are happening in our schools. So that was followed up very quickly by legislation that has been introduced by a delegate in Fairfax. And that legislation would require that all 132 school divisions eliminate those programs unless they could fund them themselves. And so, and that was endorsed by several leaders in the Northern Virginia area. And that endorsement and that request went straight to Governor Northam. So in so much as the Virginia legislature is considering that legislation, and based on my conversations with our board members, the feedback that I have for the school board and that our principals have affirmed is that our relationship with the Middlesex Sheriff's Office, and specifically the School Resource Officer Program in Middlesex, is a very, very positive one. Our relationship with the sheriff is positive. The training that our school resource officers go through is positive, and we do not have the kinds of situations that are being cited by the folks in Northern Virginia as problems. We don't have school resource officers that undermine administrators' efforts to adjudicate school discipline. We don't have frivolous charges. In fact, reportedly, we have students who feel comfortable to go to some of our school resource officers the way they do our counselors. There's a very positive relationship between the sheriff's office and the school leadership, the school resource officers and the school administration, and the overall impact that it has on our student body. And so I wanted to ask the school board if the board would like me to write a letter on behalf of the board, or if there's another way that the board would like to make known. Not that I don't recommend that we say anything about what's happening in Fairfax or anybody else, because quite candidly, I don't have any idea what's going on in Fairfax. I haven't been in those schools, but I don't think that Fairfax should tell us what's going on in Middlesex and make sweeping judgments about programs and eliminate funding. So I wanted to give the board our support for the relationship we have with the sheriff and the positive impact that we think it has on our schools, and ask for direction.
Thank you, Dr. Gratz. Comments?
Madam Chairman, I'll make the motion that we request the superintendent to address our concerns about eliminating the resource officers. And then I'd like to comment about that motion.
Is there a second? Any comments?
I understand that, and of course, we've seen the initiative from the state level about increasing guidance counselors. And I understand the concern about mental health and that we need that service as well, particularly since we do not have a full-time school psychologist. But I do not think it's appropriate to eliminate resource officers to cover that desperate need anyway. Thank you.
Anyone else have comment?
I would say in no way, shape, or form should we do away with they've been a positive influence in our system. They've always been a positive influence, regardless of what's been going on in other places. And we can't let that disrupt our system.
I agree completely. The relationship that we have with our sheriff's department is really outstanding, and our SROs are so helpful, always have been helpful, and certainly bring a great deal to the relationship between our students and our sheriff's department, and I think out in our community as well. So I definitely would like to see you write a letter in support of keeping SROs. And I don't think someone else, I'm with Mr. Goforth. We need funding for mental health, but that doesn't mean it comes at the expense of dropping SRO support. All right, if no other comments, all those in favor of the motion to write a letter on behalf of support of SROs and SRO funding indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. There you have it.
Thank you.
Yes. Any other new business to come before the group? I knew I had something briefly. The legislative meeting in September, which is virtual, has the FOIA seminar that we all need to do. So, and I think that has to be done by December 31st. Is that right, Ms. Jordan?
Correct.
So remember last year we went and we had the COIA seminar. Well, this year they're providing the FOIA seminar that is required at that meeting. It is virtual. It is like on 9 a.m. to 2 in the afternoon. You are at home, so that is an advantage. But I think we need to sign up for that in order to get that FOIA requirement as school board members. And so I think that was all I had. Anybody else have anything for the good of the group?
Peggy gonna sign us up for it?
Yes, I'll contact each one of you individually just to make sure you all want to stay on it, give you the dates, the details and all that, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Mrs. Jordan. All right, if there's nothing else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you all
Thank you.
for checking in. Those of you who were online that we never heard from, but thank you so much.
Right, y'all take care.
Everybody.